Welcome, trainers, to a journey down memory lane, where we play through each Pokemon generation and talk about our experiences, starting with Generation 1, the Kanto region. My name is Chris. I'm the normal trainer, and I'm playing Pokemon Blue. I'm also joined by my two fellow co-hosts.
My name is Sean. I'm the Pokemon Master, and I'm playing Pokemon Red.
And my name is Dustin. I'm the Pokemon Hunter, and I'm playing Pokemon Yellow.
And we are known as the Trainer Trio.
In our last episode, we beat Sabrina and acquired the Marsh Badge. Since then, we've participated in our round-robin format of trainer battles, which we call the Kanto battles, on Pokemon Showdown to see who really had the best Pokemon team.
I will just tell everyone our records going into this round. I was 10-0, Dustin is 3-7, and Chris was 2-7. Going into the first round, the first match we decided would be me versus Chris, as I had the best record and Chris had the lowest record. So, I started out with my Dragonair, and Chris started out with his Execute. And I tried just to do some little rap shenanigans, but Chris is very accustomed to that strategy, and he quickly took down my Dragonair. It was a pretty close battle all throughout. This is the second time that Chris actually took out my Blastoise with his Charizard, and each time it always hurts to see it happen, because, I have the type advantage, but Charizard's just so fast. It's always sad, but it got to a point where I had gotten his Persian paralyzed, and seemingly out of nowhere, his Persian got a full paralysis 3 turns in a row, which Chris did the math, that's a 1 in 64 chance for that to have happened. It was just my Madame, which is, for you guys who don't know, my Genghis Khan, versus his Execute. I won off a crit strength when I should have lost if Chris was able to get one more Psychic off. So it was a very, very stressful game. If I didn't get that crit, Chris would have won. So very, very close, as you can see. Everyone else is catching up to me. But I was still able to pull out the W in the end. For the second match, it was Dustin versus Chris, and it started off with Chris's Execute versus Dustin's Hypno. It was just both of them were trying to get the other Pokemon to fall asleep, but eventually Chris got his Sandslash out, and he was able to get 2 Swords Dances up, and from there Dustin really wasn't able to do anything, because the damage output and the speed from Sandslash was just too much for Dustin to catch up. If you guys are keeping score back home, right now I was 1-0, Chris is 1-1, and Dustin is 0-1. Going into the final match, it was me versus Dustin. Again, I started out with Dragonair, he started out with his Hypno, and I always try and do my cheesy rap strategy, but now my other co-hosts are getting used to it, and so they're able to counter that strategy pretty quick. For this match, I was able to eventually get my Nidoqueen, also goes by the name of Queenie, out, and she was able to take out a lot of Dustin's Pokemon with a combination of Earthquake and Rock Slide. The final results after that round was making me 12-0, and Dustin and Chris are now both 3-9. We originally kind of just started this out as a fun, see who's the better trainer after the gyms. But we kind of decided these results for the round robins will allow the number 1 person to pick their starter for the next generation. And so on and so forth. So right now that I'm in the lead, it's pretty clear that I will be able to choose my starter for Gen 2 next. But the battle is really heating up between Dustin and Chris to see who will get their second choice at a starter for the next generation.
That's very true. We only have 3 more chances to see who can get the second pick.
And we have to figure out if Sean will go undefeated.
Ooh, that's what I really want to try and do. Honestly, if either me or Chris beat Sean once, they're probably going to be the person to pick the starter.
I remember when the battle between me and Chris was going on, Dustin was watching it, and he was cheering on Chris, and that was sad.
Hey, no one likes to see Tom Brady win another Super Bowl. Let us win.
Nah, but winning's so fun.
I mean, in this case, Chris and I are the underdogs, so we're on the same team. We're tied now, too.
There were close games. I mean, even with the fight between me and Dustin, I believe I was down to only 2 Pokemon when I had my Nidoqueen eventually clean it up. But they're getting pretty close, so congrats to you guys for catching up. Will it be enough? I don't think so.
And the one match with you against Chris, honestly, if he didn't get paralyzed one more turn, he would have beaten you. Just one turn was all it took for Chris to beat you, so he was on the cusp of victory there.
He was. 1 in 64 chance.
Don't remind me.
It is good being back. I believe since the last time we've all recorded, we've actually all gone to New York, obviously for Pokemon training, which is just a crazy coincidence.
I hear the best trainers are out there, so.
I purposely went to New York to see the Pokéclips. I don't know if you guys saw it.
I hate you for saying that. Well, now this will date the episode, because people will be like, oh, when did the eclipse happen? And they'll know that's when this was recorded.
We already dated ourselves with the 49ers stuff.
Hey, we're timeless.
I did calculate the stats from our last episode, just to see how our sector times are doing so far. And it looks like I had the longest time in that sector. I finished the 6th gym leader, Sabrina, in 8 hours and 42 minutes. Chris finished it in 4 hours and 8 minutes, and Sean was extremely quick at 2 hours and 47 minutes. I do have to say I spent most of my time capturing Pokemon, which we didn't go over in the previous episode, so who knows if we'll find some time for me to talk about my Pokemon hunting journey, which took place during the Sabrina sector. In the Pokédex entries here, Sean caught the least amount of Pokemon. He only caught 4 Pokemon in the last episode. Chris caught 9, and I caught 26 Pokemon. So just to compare that to when we had the Safari Zone, I caught 39 Pokemon in the Safari Zone, and then 26 Pokemon afterwards. The main reason is because I was given, surf and, all the fishing rods, so I really utilized that. And then finally, we do have our sector levels, how much we leveled up our Pokemon, which Chris had the least with 1.7, then Sean at 3.9 levels, and I had the most at 6 levels. And I just thought this was interesting because obviously, Chris stood the best chance against Sean and leveled up his Pokemon the least. Our average Pokemon levels here, I had the highest at level 44, and then both Chris and Sean actually had the average level of 40 Pokemon. So this really shows that having the highest level, average level Pokemon doesn't really help you in the Poke battles.
Not when you have a Pikachu.
I wish I could evolve Pikachu into Raichu, but that is not the case.
In this episode, it turns out that we only have one more city left to explore. We're gonna hop on our Pokemon, go surfing down to Route 19. On the way to our last city, we're gonna come across a new dungeon called the Seafoam Islands. After finding out what's there, we'll go ahead and continue on the route to Route 20. We'll reach Cinnabar Island, which has a couple things in store for us, including the Pokemon Mansion, the gym leader Blaine, and some interesting lore about Pokemon that I'd love to talk about. Are you guys ready?
I am ready, and as always bring something in right before we start. So there are a couple things I've learned since we last recorded. A couple interesting things and something that I found out. So one of them being, if you remember way back in the Cerulean city, there's a backyard that apparently was empty. Apparently I figured out that there's actually a rare candy hidden in that backyard. So I know Chris and I were both just wondering, why is this thing here? There's nothing back here. I guess that's the reason why. And I have never really found anything hidden, so I only found out through watching a couple of YouTube videos.
Did you end up going back to grab it then?
I don't remember that, so...
Well, at least you know it's there.
I also found out, apparently if you use cut in the grass, it'll actually cut down the grass. So that was pretty cool. Something I've never actually tried, but it's just cool that's a mechanic that you can use in the game.
I know that's a feature at least through Generation 3. I can't remember. At some point they got rid of it. We'll have to figure out which generation it actually goes away.
And then my last little tidbit before we head into Route 19 is that I never knew this, but apparently there's also a red bar mechanic that you use for speedrunning where if you get your Pokemon into the red, it speeds everything up. That includes the battle cries or making the animations even faster. So apparently that's what speedrunners use to just make everything faster, which I never knew about.
Oh, did you know that, Chris?
Not really, but I have noticed that when you get into the red, it does feel like everything goes about 25% quicker. Let's go ahead and start talking about our journey down to Cinnabar Island. So going through Route 19, honestly, this is kind of one of the more boring routes, I have to say. I don't think there were any items that you could collect. I don't think there were any new Pokemon that we could collect either. The only thing that I could really make note was there's the Swimmer Pokemon Trainer type, which only has water Pokemon. And something that really disappointed me is that possibly because these guys are naked, they don't really carry a lot of cash on them. So after beating each one, they give you about 150 Pokedollars, which was really frustrating.
You just have to be lucky to actually carry cash with them, Chris. Do you carry cash with you while you swim?
That's a good point, because you come across a couple beauties on that route, and the beauties are in fact rich. They're giving you about 2,000 Pokedollars, so good point. I gotta be honest, do you guys have any stories about going through Route 19?
My only story, which, you know me, I have to comment on every Gen 1 sprite I see, just because they're so weird. This is the first time I saw a Sea King, and he just looks super fishy. Just like, I don't know, in later generations he looks more like a Pokemon, but now he just looks like a fish. Also, Tentacruel, he has his two little tentacles like crossed. He looks like a big bad mafia boss or something. I don't know, I'm kind of a fan of it.
Same. I saw the Tentacruel there, and with his arms crossed, like, hey, you messing with me? I loved it. So one thing that I read up on is that in Pokemon Yellow exclusively, there is a summer beach house that is on that beach before Route 19 or just south of Fuchsia City. Inside, there's a man known as the Surfin' Dude, which allows trainers to partake in a minigame called Pikachu's Beach if they have the Surfing Pikachu. Or if you're playing on the Nintendo 3DS version, I believe that is just unlocked for you if you bought it on the Virtual Console. And unfortunately, I don't think, Dustin, you have a Surfing Pikachu. Is that correct?
I was unable to play this minigame.
Yeah, I remember playing that minigame because I think from the very episode 0, I said when we had started this that I did have, Dustin and me both had Pokemon Yellow, and I remember in order to get Pokemon or the Pikachu with Surf, you need to do a lot of stuff on Pokemon Stadium, and I had the special N64 that Chris now has, the Pokemon Stadium edition. I remember doing all of that so I could get the Surfing Pikachu and doing that mini game. So that just unlocked a memory that I didn't remember I had.
I think I have most of the technology to maybe unlock this mini game. So maybe we'll have to do a bonus episode to this podcast to see if we've ever unlocked it.
Moving on to Route 19, I did take some notes on the trainers, and I felt in this section of the game, it seems like a lot of the trainers had some very funny comments to make. One of them would just say glub right before you battle him. Another one was like belly flop. There's one that said, these waters are very treacherous. And then I decided to talk to him afterwards to see how he was doing after just getting beaten down by me. And he said that, uh-oh, I got a cramp. And then glub glub, splash.
You killed him!
He had some weak Pokemon, is all I remember. It seems like a lot of them were doing some swim to Seafoam Island, which seems very difficult because it was quite far while we were on the Pokemon. There was even one person saying that they wish that they could ride a Pokemon. And I thought it was just interesting that we're the only trainer out here that is using Surf and being on the Pokemon. So it seems like all the other trainers on this route have not beaten Koga, unlike us. And then my last comment here is, I was just thinking also, in the world here, you're swimming on the Pokemon, and then you're battling against the swimmers. And I'm just wondering how this type of battle would take place. Like, those people would have to, like, reach out, throw out their Pokemon, which some of them are obviously not water Pokemon. Well, I guess for us, we don't have water Pokemon. They all had water Pokemon. So I'm just wondering how those Pokemon would actually fight in the water.
Yeah, they don't really address that this generation. And honestly, looking ahead, they don't really address that until very, very recently. So, yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. Those are all my notes that I had really here. Well, one more note where one of the trainers did mention that Seafoam Island is a quiet getaway place. And when we head into Seafoam Island, it does not seem like a good getaway place. It's like a one small island with 2 caves.
They make it sound like Seafoam Island sounds like a tropical getaway or something like that. No, literally the description of it is just a pair of islands that is situated on Route 20. So I don't know what they're getting that from.
Well, let's head into Seafoam Islands.
I mean, I don't really have The only notes, which again, it just goes back to the Pokemon sprites, is I wrote down that Seal looks like a goober. Because he looks like a goober. That's what Seal looks like. He looks like a goofy goober.
Goofy goober.
I know that it looks like there's some new Pokemon that you can acquire in the Seafoam Islands. You now have the ability to catch Golbat, which I don't think has previously been around, which is a 5% chance in both red and blue and in yellow. Psyduck is catchable in red and blue. For some reason, Golduck is only available in Pokemon Red at a 1% chance. On the other side, you have Slowpoke available, and Slowbro is only available in Pokemon Blue at a 1% chance. And then, as Sean mentioned, there's Seal, there's Shelter in Pokemon Red, there's Krabby in Pokemon Blue, Horsey in Pokemon Red, and Staryu in Pokemon Blue. So for some reason, they really wanted to keep switching around the Pokemon you can get, even though most of these Pokemon are not exclusives at all. They just made them exclusives to the Seafoam Islands.
Did you guys capture any new Pokemon in these caves?
I didn't capture any of the ones mentioned.
Oh boy. I ended up catching almost all of them. A couple of them I had to go back and catch later, including Slowbro. But I caught Seal, Shelter, Krabby, Horsey, Staryu. I caught almost all of them. So I was trying to catch up to Dustin.
We'll see how that goes at the end of the episode. I did capture 3 new Pokemon, which was Golbat, Dugong, and Seal. And I did record those Pokédexes, which Seal loves freezing cold conditions. It relishes swimming in a frigid climate of around 14 degrees Fahrenheit. I didn't really realize that Seal, well, I guess it makes sense in the real world that Seals like colder temperatures, but at least in Pokemon I always thought it's just like a normal water Pokemon, but in this case it looks like it's obviously more of like an icy water Pokemon. And then Dugong, its entire body is a snowy white. Unharmed by even intense cold, it swims powerfully in icy waters, so maintaining the icy water feel. And it was interesting how I think in one of the previous episodes we did talk about Golbat, but we never actually went over his Pokédex entry, which in this case, I finally caught it, and it attacks in a stealthy manner without warning. Its sharp fangs are used to bite and suck blood, so it makes it even more terrifying knowing that that thing is out there in the caves and will just attack you without notice.
Yeah, it's because it's terrifying. It's massive.
Don't forget its tongue that's sticking out at you in Pokemon Red and Blue.
I hate its sprites so much.
Oh, Dustin, I'm so sad that you got Pokemon Yellow. You got normal sprites.
I know, can't talk about these ones, but we'll have to see in the next generation.
Which, fun fact, that reminds me, Golbat, and I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot about Pokemon Stadium, but in Pokemon Stadium, Golbat's sprite was he's standing and he has his 2 wings covering his mouth like he's Dracula, and then every time he'd attack, he'd like open them and he'd open his mouth and like his tongue and his teeth. Again, very random, but I liked his sprite there. Actually, I'm not a fan of his sprite, no matter what, but I just really hate his Gen 1 sprite, and so I'm gonna drive that stake to the ground. That stake through the vampire.
Looks like there were a couple items you could have got at the Seafoam Islands as well. Just a couple, and they were all hidden, so I imagine you guys didn't get them.
No.
Nope.
There was a Nugget, which was in Basement 2. There was a Max Elixir in Basement 3. And an Ultra Ball, which is not that fun, in Basement 4. So, nothing that was too groundbreaking there, but a couple hidden items, which, based on how this podcast has been going, I assumed you guys didn't get that, and I guess you guys verified that. So I wanted to ask you guys, did you guys have any trouble going through the Seafoam Islands? Did it take you a while? Were you confused? Did you have to look up anything? How did it go?
My story was, as I was going through, I think I told you guys, well, you guys probably know, my Blastoise, my Pokemon that knows Surf, also knows Dig. And Dig is right above Surf. So I think I was about like halfway through the dungeon when I was just going fast and I clicked on Dig instead of Surf. And it took me all the way back to, because I think I mentioned that Dig in this generation doesn't just take you to the outside of the cave like it does in every other generation. It takes you back to the last Pokemon Center you visited, which was in Saffron City. So after that happened, I had to save the game and I was mad. I had to take a break. And so, actually this happened when we were in New York and I wanted to tell Dustin about it, but I was like, you know what? No, I need to wait to the podcast to tell him about how frustrated I am right now. Yeah. So that probably doubled my time because I had to go all the way back there and try and complete the dungeon. But that was the difficulty for me. I know it was kind of nice because I know my Pokemon were kind of getting low on health as well. So it was nice to heal them up again and bring them back out to clear it, but I was frustrated when that happened.
Did you have a Pokemon with Fly, or did you actually travel back all the way to Fuchsia City?
I ended up going the other route down, which we'll get to, but instead of going back, I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a break and do everything else and then come back to that because I was so frustrated. So, also, what frustrates me is, you guys know, my Dragon Air can't learn Fly, which, I mean, I think it's still just a dragon at this point. I know when it evolves to Dragon Knight, whenever that happens, it becomes a flying type. And so I would hope it could learn Fly then. But yeah, right now in my party, I don't have any Pokemon that has Fly, so it makes traversing a little difficult.
Moving into my version of the story. So I did notice, like, the first time I think I encountered the Golbat was actually when I noticed the different type of animations that would happen when you engage in a battle. And I just thought it was a really cool transition. So I think that's something that I want to look at after this episode, just go through and see like all the different battle transitions. Because I didn't realize there are quite a few different ones out there. But actually going into the puzzle, so inside the puzzle, it's all about moving the boulders into the holes. So then that way you can raise the water level. But you don't really realize that what you're doing is raising the water level. I just saw these boulders and I was like, all right, if I push down the black square, it goes into the hole and just disappears. So I just kept doing that for a little while. And then I ended up falling into one of the holes, and that's where I saw the sign that basically says boulders might change the flow of water with a question mark. I guess that was a way to help me realize, okay, that's the puzzle. That's what I'm doing here. So after a little bit, I basically just kept going like up and down and like trying my best to like basically beat the puzzle, but it did take me a while. And eventually I finally got to the one Pokemon, one of the main reasons why we came. Well, originally is the only reason I thought that Seafoam Islands was good was because you find a legendary bird, Articuno. Before we go into that though, Chris, how did you handle this puzzle?
I remember that the main puzzle gimmick for this dungeon was pushing boulders through the holes, so at least being able to remember that, I was able to get through it relatively quickly. It was just a matter of a couple times I feel like I got lost along the way in trying to find my way to Articuno, but other than that, I didn't have too much trouble, and I actually used this as a good training opportunity for Eve, my Jolteon. Since all the wild Pokemon in this area are mostly water types, I was able to get some good experience, especially that some of these Pokemon are evolved forms. They were giving me some good experience. So I was having a good time in the Seafoam Islands, but can't say I got stuck too often, but I did think it was clever. I mean, you're this far into the game and there's a new way to do puzzles. Like we've seen panels that transport you. We've seen now water puzzles. We've seen darkness. We've seen a lot of different gimmicks thrown at you in these little dungeons. So I thought that was creative because I don't think that they come up with enough new creative ones in the modern Pokemon games.
So did you guys all battle Articuno before leaving the cave, or did you capture him? How did that go?
Chris, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. My notes. Went through the entire Seafoam Islands and caught Articuno in 2 balls. Sleep really works.
I am so mad.
That was like my experience with Zapdos.
As we all know, sleep doubles the chance of being able to catch a wild Pokemon, so I stocked up on my Ultra Balls. I whittled it down and put it to sleep, and literally an Ultra Ball and a sleeping Pokemon with low HP. I think even for these legendaries, it's a pretty good strategy.
Is that Pokemon Hunter approved strategy, Dustin?
I guess we'll go into my strategy against this one too, because one of my favorite Pokemon, even though they aren't the best Pokemon in battle, they're the best Pokemon hunting Pokemon, which is Victory Bell. Because just like Chris, Victory Bell is able to easily put their Pokemon to sleep with Sleep Powder, And in this case, I also have Stun Powder too, so I have 2 methods to really help. But going into Articuno, my Victory Bell was already fainted, so I basically went up against him at a disadvantage. And it was harder to capture than Zapdos for me. It didn't take just 2 Ultra Balls like Chris. I am trying to use Hypno, because Hypno's my backup sleep Pokemon, uses Hypnosis, and for this case it would literally fall asleep for 1 turn and then wake up the next turn. And Articuno was dealing a bunch of damage to my team, and eventually killed my Hypno, leaving me basically weak where I couldn't really put it to sleep or stun it. And Articuno actually took out my entire team. So this was my first time I had to restart the game because I couldn't capture Articuno. This was all because I decided to try and battle Articuno without my number 1 Pokemon capturing Pokemon, Victory Bell. So afterwards, I basically reload the save, and this time, instead of battling him, I went back to the Poke Center, healed up Victory Bell, and basically paralyzed it, and within 1 Ultra Ball I caught it. So my second playthrough was much better.
So then if I remember correctly, Chris has caught both of the legendary birds the first time through, and Dustin, you got Zapdos pretty easily, but it took you 2 tries for Articuno. So it took me 2 tries for Zapdos, and you bet your bottom dollar it took me 2 tries to catch Articuno as well. Because the first time, I think I mentioned I'm not big on Ultra Balls because they're really expensive, and so I don't like buying them. And so I had a bunch of Great Balls. And anyways, going into the first battle, not a single Pokeball Great Ball even hit Articuno, and he just swept my entire team. So that was very disappointing. And so I had to restart, try again. And then the second time I was able to actually, so I have my Electabuzz, but at this time I don't think it knew Thunder Wave, which is a move that automatically paralyzes a Pokemon. So my only status conditioning move is on my Dragonair for Thunder Wave that it has. But the first time around, Articuno's an Ice Flying type. 1 Ice Beam faints. It's super effective against my Dragonair, so it took it down. Second time, I think it used a different move, so I was able to get the Thunder Wave off and get it paralyzed. And then I got it on the second Great Ball I used on it, which just made me so mad that I couldn't even hit it at all the first time with a Pokeball. And then this time, I was able to get it just 2 tries.
Everyone has a specialty. Yours is not capturing Pokemon.
It's battling. Look at the record.
We all did capture Articuno, our second legendary bird Pokemon. And in this case, Articuno's Pokédex reads, a legendary bird Pokemon. It freezes water that is contained in winter air and makes it snow.
I'll just say, Articuno is always an interesting Pokemon because I always liked its design, but it's an ice flying type, which is just a terrible typing because ice, everyone will come to find out, is one of the worst defensive typings because there's so many moves that are super effective against it. And then you throw flying on top of that, which just also has a lot of very common type moves are super effective or can hit Articuno. And you'll find that Articuno's stats kind of tries to make it be a bulky Pokemon, but just from its type combination, it's unfortunately suffers from that and not as good of a Pokemon as it should be because Pokemon Company just really did ice dirty.
So when you find Articuno, it's level 50, you can add it to your team immediately, and it already knows Ice Beam, which is a 95 power move that gets same type attack bonus. And Sean, as you've mentioned, dragons are weak to ice moves. So that's what I feel like Articuno was kind of set up as the Pokemon that you can catch and immediately add to your team if you're going to struggle against some dragons.
There's only one dragon type in this generation, unfortunately, though.
It may be important later on, we'll see.
I'm also jealous of that Ice Beam because I think in this game so far you can only get 1 Ice Beam TM, which in my case, a while ago I taught it to Gyarados, which he is no longer part of my party, and I have a Cloyster who would really much like the Ice Beam, so I am regretting that decision.
That's where the fun is in these earlier generations where you only get to use the TM once, because then you're going to make those mistakes. Like, I gave my Thunderbolt to Mr. Mime that's no longer on my party, but Electabuzz would have loved that move.
Yeah, talk about mistakes. My Charizard knows Strength, and I don't think there's a move deleter in this generation, so my Charizard's just going to know Strength until we're done.
You taught your main starter Pokemon an HM, Chris?
I forgot that you can't get rid of HM moves in Generation 1, so oops.
So afterwards, after you beat Articuno, I did kind of struggle after this point, because I thought, like, alright, I beat Articuno, I went out the exact same way that I came in. You see that there's another cave to the bottom right. This was the central cave that we went to. So when I exited and then I went back into Route 19, I started surfing, trying to figure out, alright, how do I get to the second cave? And I probably spent like a good 5 minutes just like looking, realizing, oh, you probably have to go do something in the cave to find the exit, and that's probably where you get out. So I went back in, and this is where I really struggled, because I thought I completed the puzzle. I thought it was only for Articuno, and now I have to figure out where did I mess up and where's the exit. So I went all over the place, like through all the floors in the dungeon, only to realize that there were 2 boulders on the very first floor that I didn't even push down. So I finally went back up there, pushed them down, and escaped from there.
I accidentally went out the wrong way before even catching Articuno, to be honest. I came in from the other side. I came in from the western side, and then was going through, doing my stuff, and I found the exit on the eastern side and said, wait, I wasn't done yet, so I had to go back in and catch Articuno. But at least from there, I had a flying Pokemon that doesn't matter which exit I went out, I transported myself out of there because I had already come from both sides at that point.
For me, this was like my first time going there, so I couldn't get to the other side unless I went through Seafoam Islands. Otherwise, let's see, what else do I have here? So there's just a short little trek. I believe this is Route 20 to get to Cinnabar Island, which is basically, this is where you finally start getting some teasers at what's coming in Cinnabar Island from the trainers. One of them mentioning that Pokemon have taken over this Pokemon mansion. And another one being that there is a lab on Cinnabar Island for Pokemon. So I was excited to find that out. And this was also where I decided to take a look at my current Pokédex, because I'm trying to become a Pokemon hunter, trying to capture everything. And I thought it was interesting because I guess if you don't capture Dratini or Dragonair or you don't see them, their Pokédex entries are hidden. As of right now, I have like Dratini and Dragonair, so numbers 149 through 151 were hidden. So for me, that's like Dragonite, Mew, and Mewtwo. So I thought that was quite interesting how they hid some non-legendary Pokemon with that.
I guess Sean and I kind of broke the game by catching the 151st Pokemon after the 3rd gym.
Before we get to Cinnabar Island, let's just talk about the small other route, which is the north side, where you go from Pallet Town to Cinnabar Island. I think Sean took this route, and Chris, I'm the only one who didn't take this to Cinnabar Island. Do you guys have any stories there?
My story is just, I guess, a continuation of where I left off because, I was halfway through Seafoam Islands when I used Dig, and that's when I decided just to go down here this way to go to actually Cinnabar Island and to go to Seafoam Islands again. But the only thing that I really took note of is there's one trainer, when he battles you, he says, "What's wrong with me swimming?" And I'm just like, that's such a weird thing to say. And then you see his sprite, and he's the cue bowl sprite, and he's not a swimmer. And I'm just like, what are you doing out here? Like, you're wearing full leather in the water, bro. Like, that cannot be comfortable.
I also took a note about the same one because I was like, what is he swimming on in the water? But then after you beat him and you talk to him, he says, I look like what? A studded inner tube. So I guess he had an air tube out there.
That's funny. I didn't notice that at all, but only things I have to note, I thought it was kind of fun to go back to the first town where it all started. So going back to Pallet Town, hearing the jingle, said hi to my mom. She rested me up and everything. It was kind of nice. Went down south. So yet again, I don't know of other Pokemon generations where there's a way out of your town that you can't access until about 25 hours into the game. So that was nice map design for Kanto.
There was also, I noticed like all of the trainers within this portion, they appear to be in a triathlon. One of them did mention that they're beat and they still have the bike race and the marathon left. So I'm guessing those are taking place also going through Pallet Town, which is just cool world building there, making it seem like it's alive and things are happening. There's also like a little dock in the middle of this water portion, and that's where you face off against a fisherman who has 6 Pokemon in his team. And they're all just Magikarp. I believe this is the first trainer that we see that has a full party of 6 Pokemon, and we only see that one other time in this game that will be coming up later, which is just kind of crazy that they gave this one guy 6 Pokemon, all Magikarp.
I'm pretty sure that's a reoccurring theme in the Pokemon games which, I don't know, I guess we'll find out as we go through them, but I'm pretty sure you're going to find one Pokemon trainer with a full party of just Magikarps for whatever reason.
Oh man, I'll be on the lookout for that.
I took advantage of that trainer and used Purdy, my Persian, to just keep using Payday. And I think I got like 600 Poké Dollars worth of Payday money.
Let's move on to Cinnabar Island, which also appears to be a very small island from what I remember from last time playing, but I'm guessing the anime had some effect on me because I remember watching the anime. It's like this cool volcano island.
They mention volcano and everything is fire-based at the gym, but there is no volcano visible in at least Generation 1, which I thought was kind of interesting. It would have been nice if maybe they were able to put a sprite in there or a little couple pixels, but maybe that would have been a little difficult back then. There's a couple things to mention here. Obviously, we just mentioned the gym, which for some reason is locked when you get there. That's kind of rude. And then there's the Pokemon Mansion, and then there's Cinnabar Lab. Which one would you guys like to talk about first?
Let's start with the lab first.
Yeah, the lab was the first thing I went into just to see what was happening there. I knew the mansion would be a long adventure, so I wanted to do the short ones first. But did you guys notice anything interesting in the lab?
No, what was interesting in the lab?
I noticed that there's a Dr. Fuji who's the owner of the lab, which is interesting because we met a Mr. Fuji back in Lavender Town. So are these the same people? Or was he actually called Dr. Fuji back then? I thought he was just Mr. Fuji back then.
He was Mr. Fuji when we saw him in Lavender Town, and there was no doctor, but I believe that's the same person, or I'd like to assume that that's the same person they're referring to.
So it's just some interesting world building that what happened to this doctor who he founded a lab, but now he's just hanging out with dead Pokemon in Lavender Town.
Maybe there's a reason why he's hiding out, which we'll find out later. I did notice there's also a photo in a couple walls of the labs with just Dr. Fuji on it. And there's also a couple trades that you can do. There's actually a lot of trades you can do just within the lab. I don't know if it's different for Pokemon Red and Blue, but in Pokemon Yellow, you can trade a Growlithe for a Dugong, a Golduck for a Rhydon, a Kangaskhan for Monk, and those are the 3 trades that you can do in Pokemon Yellow.
There's only one trade that would seem even worth it out of those 3. Not the greatest ones.
I already have all the Pokemon other than Golduck. I want Golduck, but I cannot get a Golduck in Pokemon Yellow.
Sad. Well, Chris, tell us about the trades that we had.
In Pokemon Red and Blue, you can trade a Ponyta for a Seal. Kind of not worth it, considering we just found Seal in the Seafoam Islands. You have a Raichu for an Electrode. Yet again, not too worth it. We just found a bunch of those in the power plant. And then you have a Venonat for a Tangela. And I'm going to look up right now to figure out if that is the only way you can get Tangela, which I think is the case. No. In Pokemon Red and Blue, you can find Tangela on Route 21. So, I don't know. None of those trades are really that worth it either in our game, unfortunately.
Going further into the Pokemon Lab, there are 3 rooms within the lab. There's the meeting room, which had for me 2 of the trades. There's the testing room, which had 1 of the trades, and then the R&D room. Inside the R&D room, you get some more information just by looking at one of the computer emails. which details 3 legendary bird Pokemon and lists their names, which at this point, we already have 2 of them, so we're just looking for that final bird Pokemon. And it also says afterwards that the person who wrote this email will be checking the cavern by Cerulean City next, so I wonder what that's alluding to.
Dun, dun, dun.
This is also where if you, a first-time Pokemon player, back when it first came out, this is probably the first time you'll actually find out that Eevee can evolve into 3 kinds of Pokemon. They mentioned that. You're also given the TM that someone made for fun, Metronome, which is probably one of the worst moves in the game. That's the move where anytime you attack it, does something completely random.
Sounds like the best move in the game. What are you talking about?
It is a Nuzlocker's worst nightmare right there.
Okay, and then we get into the testing room. This is where all the fun happens, because this is where I can actually get some new Pokemon. So this is where an important doctor who studies fossils stays. Basically, you can give them your Pokemon. In my case, I had 2 that was I'll give. Had the Ammonite and the Aerodactyl fossils. How about you guys?
So I had the Dome fossil, so I was able to get Kabuto.
I had the Helix fossil, but I'm going to be honest, I don't care about the Pokemon. I only care about the fossil. Praise Lord Helix.
Did you not revive your Pokemon, Sean?
Of course not, because then I lose the Helix fossil, the sacred artifact. I can't do that.
Wow, completely anti-Pokemon hunting behavior, I see. Did you guys ever get Aerodactyl too?
I actually did not get Aerodactyl. I should go back and get that.
I know how to get Aerodactyl, but I would only want it if I was going to use it on my team. And, if we somehow, some way revisit this region in a later game, maybe, but that would be crazy. Coming back to this region again in a later game? What? That can't happen. So, in episode 0, we did place some limits on the Pokemon that we could use. Obviously, we talked about the starters, we talked about the evolutions. One of them was the fossil Pokemon. So, I could only use Ammonite on my team, Chris could only use Kabuto, and then Dustin could only use Aerodactyl. And personally, since I have Blastoise, that's why I haven't caught a single other water Pokemon, because no other water Pokemon means anything to me, because I have Blastoise.
In this case, I did get the Pokédex for Aerodactyl, which reads a savage Pokemon that died out in ancient times. I was thinking that was a pretty short Pokédex entry, so I decided to look online. And this is actually where I figured out that there's different Pokédex entries based off of the game that you're playing, which I never realized. And I decided to read the red and blue one, which reads, a ferocious, prehistoric Pokemon that goes for the enemy's throat with its serrated, saw-like fangs. Which is a very savage Pokédex reading. I felt like the Pokemon Yellow one is just very basic and doesn't tell you that much. It just says that it was savage and it died out. But this one really details this is how Aerodactyl hunted for food back in the day.
That's terrifying.
There's a reason it's extinct. It is too scary for the modern world.
And here we are bringing it back.
One thing I like about Gen 1 is that when you revive these Pokemon, they come back at level 30, which is not probably where your Pokemon will be at. I assume your Pokemon are in the 40s at this point. But in Fire Red and Leaf Green, these Pokemon come back at level 5. So they basically disincentivize you from adding them to your team, which I think is a little bit of a bummer. So this is where Gen 1 is just a little better, in my opinion.
Moving outside of the Pokemon Lab, there are a couple other notifications before we go into Pokemon Mansion. So if you talk to some of the NPCs, they did mention the lab that you did come out of is like a burned out looking building where scientists conduct experiments. So I guess that's also another hint that there was a fire, maybe from the volcano, so some of the buildings got charred. There's also Blaine, who's an odd man who lived on the island for decades, is one of the comments from another NPC. And the sign outside of the gym, we'll get to that in a bit.
At this point, did we all just enter into the Pokemon Mansion?
Oh yeah. I'm just going to start right here by saying the Pokemon Mansion might be my favorite location in all of Kanto.
Oh, why, Chris? Share.
Oh my gosh. I just think it is so mysterious. It feels so realistic. It adds so much lore. Finding those journals in the Pokemon Mansion are so interesting. I think the Pokemon you can find there are really I think they make sense why they're there. I mean, it's just so much care and detail went into this one location, and I just love going in there every single time.
I did feel this was like the biggest point in the game that you just get so much lore dropped on you. But it's also the point where you get attacked by a bunch of Pokemon. I felt every 5 seconds I was battling a new Pokemon.
Yeah, this is one of the few times that I could think of where you're indoors, but it's still, you can encounter Pokemon while indoors. You know, because most other times if you walk into a building, you're not walking around, other than if it's a cave. That's the only other scenario that I could think of. And then I guess the Pokemon Tower for here. But it's not really common, and I guess we'll have to see in the later Pokemon games if I'm just completely missing the point on this. But yeah, I thought it's just fun. It is a very fun location, though. What Chris was saying, I feel very similar as well. I really like this place, and I remember back in the day, I thought this is where you would either find Mew or Mewtwo because of all the lore that's dropped here about those two Pokemon.
Looking at the Pokemon that you can find here, I don't know if there's any exclusives that you haven't been able to find, but you can find in Pokemon Yellow, Raticate and Rattata, which kind of makes sense that it's rat infested. You can find either the Vulpix or Growlithe line plus Ponyta as well in both red and blue, which makes sense because we're going to assume that these fire Pokemon that have roamed the islands have just taken storage in there. You can find the Grimer and Coughing line, which I also like because it makes me believe that these pollution Pokemon just take over these abandoned areas. So I thought that was some good care brought into the selection of the Pokemon at the mansion.
In this case, I did capture 2 new Pokemon, which I captured the Growlithe that you mentioned, and Ditto. This is, I think, the only place you can capture Ditto in Pokemon Yellow.
That's a good point. I forgot to mention that as well. I was not looking hard enough. You can also find a Magmar in Pokemon Blue on the 3rd floor. And then what you mentioned, Dustin, is in Pokemon Yellow exclusively on the basement floor, you can find a Ditto. And here's a little theory that people have of why you can find Ditto there. It's because people believe that Ditto is a failed clone of Mew. The reason they think that is because their base normal sprites are that pink color. Both of their shiny sprites are a blue color. Both of them learn Transform. In fact, that's Ditto's only move is Transform. We know that Mew likes to transform into other Pokemon as well. And, as we're going to figure out through some journals, they did experiments on Mew in the Pokemon lab, and that's where you find Ditto in Pokemon Yellow.
I really like that theory. It had just so much more fun to Pokemon, because there's just so much that adds up, and I'm sure the Pokemon Company may have thought about implementing or explaining some stuff like that, but it's just like, you know what, we're just going to throw it out there and let the fans have their way. Because, at least at this point, shinies don't exist yet, so that, you know, I feel like making sure in the next generation that the shinies were the same, that's intentional right there, so.
It's interesting, too, because in this case, I'm pretty sure they probably had to use Ditto to make Mewtwo in this case, because they are not capturing a live Mew. So it does make sense that, like, hey, maybe they tried to make Mew first, it was Ditto, and then they tried again, and Mewtwo came out. That is really interesting. There's also 2 new trainer types inside the Pokemon Mansion. So Chris mentioned earlier to be on the lookout for the Burglar type, just because they give you the most gold by far. I did not write down the gold values. If Chris, you have those, you can mention one of them.
Each of them are over 3,000 Pokédollars per Burglar.
One of them that said something funny where they just said, I can't get out. They, I guess, were trying to leave after robbing the place. What's also interesting is the Burglar types, they don't fight you unless you talk to them. My best guess is they're just trying to sneak around and you're basically disrupting them. So this is the first time, I believe, also in our game where there's a trainer that's not actively fighting you as soon as they see you. There's also some scientists inside here. One of them saying that my mentor once lived here. And then this was on the 2nd floor, I believe. So after you talk to him, he does say, are you stuck? You can just jump over there. And there's just this black ledge in the game. I'm like, you want me to jump off of the 2nd building? Apparently that's just something that they thought would make sense in the game, where a little kid would jump off the 2nd floor to move further into the mansion. But that just like gave me some thought. Like, wow, like I was too scared to jump because I thought I'd actually like, I don't know, faint or pass.
Going into the Pokemon Mansion, that's when I remembered about that's how you traverse through this actual area. But the first time back in the Pokemon Yellow days, you know, when I still didn't know how to read, I had no idea how to beat this area as well, which was a very big theme back when I was playing Pokemon my first time around. But yeah, even in the Fire Red days, I don't think I was able to figure out until I had to ask someone or one of my friends to figure it out. But because of that knowledge was stuck in my brain, I remembered it and was able to quickly traverse through this dungeon.
And I guess we didn't really mention one of the main mechanics in the dungeon, but there's a couple Pokemon statues that if you press, it will like release a switch, and you don't really know where, like which doors it opens or closes. You have to actually explore afterwards to find out what happened. There is another scientist also that I found out, and he mentioned like, who are you? There shouldn't be anyone else in here. Which I thought was really funny because there's a bunch of burglars inside the place, and there's also a couple other scientists inside the place. I'm thinking like, do none of these people know that there's other people inside this building?
I was just going to mention a couple of the items that you can get in the Pokemon Mansion. You can get an escape rope, which might come in handy if you just get lazy towards the end of the mansion. You can get Carbos. You can get another Moonstone, which is actually another hidden item. I can't believe they're giving us more Moonstones this late into the game. You can find Calcium, Max Potion, Iron, a hidden Max Revive, a full Restore. You get the secret key. That's the main item that you come to get there. There are 2 rare candies, one of them being hidden. And then there are 2 TMs. You can get TM22 Solar Beam and TM14 Blizzard. And I mentioned Blizzard because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but in Generation 1, Blizzard does 110 damage like it does in the modern games, but it has a 90% accuracy instead of the 70% that you find in modern games. So really, you're getting this move that is 110 accurate, much better than Ice Beam's 95, and you're at a 90% accuracy rate. So naturally, I immediately taught that to Nessie because that is going to be a huge move going forward.
Yep, no, Blizzard's a very powerful move in this generation, but, you know, it's nice to see that, you know, it's so high in this generation, the accuracy, because, you know, with the Thunder is still very low, and, you know, later generations, they added the weather, which affects the accuracy for both those moves. I don't know, it's just nice that Blizzard's actually viable then in this game, whereas I think when we discussed getting Thunder, I mentioned how much I disliked it because of the low accuracy and no weather availability in this genre.
You guys read the diaries that are on the 2nd floor.
Oh, yes. Very interesting. What did you guys note from the diaries?
Let's see, I don't know the order. One of you guys want to like read them in the order of their actual dates that they're written.
I got you. So we have July 5th. In Guyana, South America, a new Pokemon was discovered deep in the jungle. And let's talk about how they just mentioned South America in the Pokemon world. This world lives and coexists with the real world.
They mentioned the moon landing, Chris. Of course this is the real world.
Oh my gosh, I was thinking about that too. Like, of course they got rid of all these references in later Pokemon games. For example, in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, that diary just says, we discovered a new Pokemon deep in the jungle. They don't mention South America, but I thought that was really fun to mention that. Which they still do mention in Fire Red and Leaf Green as well, so they kept it up for a while, but I think it's been retconned that they did not find Mew in South America.
And after reading this specific diary entry, like as soon as I finished it, my screen immediately went to battle transition. I thought for a moment, like, oh, am I battling Mew like right now? Or this brand new Pokemon? And then I was disappointed. It's just Eradicate. So
the next diary entry is July 10th. It says, we christened the newly discovered Pokemon Mew. After that, the next one is all the way in February 6th. So some time has passed, and it says Mew gave birth. We named the newborn Mewtwo. Very original, guys. And the last one, September 1st. Mewtwo is far too powerful. We have failed to curb its vicious tendencies.
See, and that interested me how they said Mew gave birth to Mewtwo here, Whereas in the Pokemon anime, it's very much shown that Mewtwo was created out of Mew's DNA. So I don't know why there's a difference, but just very interesting.
This is also the very first time that you hear a mention of Mew and Mewtwo, and just thinking back to, like, this is one of the things that really started the whole Pokemon craze, is you see there's, like, this Pokemon Mew, and it's nowhere to be found in the Pokédex, and you can't find it anywhere in the game. So just really cool how they did that.
Yeah, definitely. That you're probably playing through this game. You have now learned about this Pokemon called Mewtwo, and you keep thinking about it. And then finally, at the end of the game, you find Mewtwo in the cave, and you catch it, and that's your 150 Pokemon. And all of the media always talks about there's 150 born to sea to be a Pokemon master or whatever. So you probably think to yourself, like, what is this Mew Pokemon then? Was it just a legend? Like, did they actually, is it real? And I think it's so cool that they just slipped in at the last second that 150 first Pokemon that you can't even get. You can't get it at all. And I think this Pokemon Mansion adds so much to the game. Like you said, it starts the craze. And I think they did a wonderful job with these mythical Pokemons early on.
Moving on, you do find a secret key, which at the time I had no idea what it was used for. So I went around the entire mansion again, trying to figure out, where do you use this key? Why is it not working? Because I remember, like, in the Rocket Hideout, you get the key that opens all the doors. So I was thinking, okay, this is probably the same. It was not the same. So you do find out later that the key is actually meant to open the gym. Do you guys have any other stories about Pokemon Mansion, or shall we head towards the gym?
I'd love to keep talking about it, but let's move on.
What's very interesting is this key got lost in the Pokemon Mansion, and you take it, and you finally get to the gym, and you find out it's filled with people. Are these people locked in the gym? And who was the person who, like, lost the key in the Pokemon Mansion? Those will never be resolved.
I thought was very interesting when you do go into the gym is that, you know, we just got introduced to those new trainer types, and they're the trainers inside the gym. And so you just come to think about what, you know, Blaine, the gym leader, is associating with all these burglars. So it kind of implies that he's not the nicest of persons.
I also feel it's, like, very interesting because we do find out through the hint text that, like, basically one of the buildings is charred. This Pokemon Mansion is being raided. Apparently Mewtwo was created there and ran rampant throughout the whole place. And now there's a bunch of burglars that are just burglarizing the whole place. So it is interesting how, like, this place is like the Wild West out here. What is also interesting is this was the first time I decided to, like, talk to the statue inside the gym. And it does show you the winning trainers, which I don't know if this shows it to you in other gyms because I never looked at it, but it does say that, like, your rival already completed this gym.
I never knew that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it says that before every gym, that your rival's always one step ahead of you.
Just an egg on the fire, if that's the term.
Egg on the fire, yes.
No fact checking here.
Otherwise, this is the gym that's known for the quiz. So how do you guys do with the quiz? Are you ready to go through the quiz questions again?
I don't know about you, Chris, but I don't think we got any quiz questions. I think this is a Pokemon Yellow. Did you get quiz questions, Chris? I don't remember.
It depends, Sean. What did you do? Did you just go up and talk to the trainer?
Yeah. Was I not supposed to?
If you talk to the first guy, he tells you the rules, which is like, hey, you gotta beat the quiz if you want to, like, make it through, or you have to battle the trainer.
I didn't know that.
There's like a little computer or something on the side, and it asks you a question. If you get it right, it opens the door and you can keep moving. Or conversely, you can just do what you did and just immediately talk to the trainer, and if you beat him, it opens it up.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's time for Sean to retake this quiz then.
Retake? Take it for the first time.
Alright, Chris, you have all the quiz questions there?
I do have them all. Alright, Sean, question number 1. These are yes or no questions, by the way. Caterpie evolves into Butterfree?
No.
Okay, so this is, like, done completely wrong. They put the correct answer as yes in Generation 1.
It evolves to Metapod. Alright, that's stupid.
In Generation 3, they correct it and says Caterpie evolves into Metapod. So, sorry for the trick question.
Wow.
Question number 2. There are 9 certified Pokemon League badges?
No.
That is correct.
8, silly goose.
All right. Question number 3. Poliwag evolves 3 times?
No. Yes.
No. I mean, it is part of a 3-line evolution, but it evolves twice into 2 different Pokemon.
Wait, what was the answer then?
No.
No. This is a hard quiz.
Question number 4. Are thunder moves? Keep in mind, not electric moves. Are thunder moves effective against ground element type Pokemon?
I mean, thunder moves don't exist, but I'll say no.
Who wrote these questions? Yeah, you're right. The answer is no. In Generation 3, it says, are electric moves effective against ground type Pokemon? That sounds a little cleaner. And yes, the answer is still no. Next question. Pokemon of the same kind and level are not identical?
What? What is that even asking?
Okay, if you have 2 Pokemon that are the same type of Pokemon and happen to be the same level, is there a possibility that they will have different stats?
Yes.
Ding, ding, ding. Wow, that was a way better way of phrasing it.
It was. If you said it like that, oh, sure. Dang, I don't even know. I think I failed that quiz.
There's still one more.
Oh.
TM28. Does it contain the move Tombstoner?
Tombstoner?
That was the one question that I felt came out of like left field. Like all the other questions you can really answer, but like I don't know what TM is what.
You never used the move Tombstoner before? That's a no.
That's correct. TM28, for your information, in Generation 1 is Dig, the one you got in Cerulean City all the way back in Episode 3. And if you were curious, in Generation 3, they changed Tombstoner to Tombstoney.
I did really like this quiz, the one quiz that Sean just didn't even know was there. So I was thinking maybe in our next episode, since it might be cut a little bit short, depending on how we do it, I made a quiz of our own up to this point. So I'm going to have the 2 of you perform the quiz to see who's the real Pokemon knowledge head.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I mean, I didn't really do good on this last one, so we're going to have to see how this next one goes.
It'll be fine. It's like, hopefully, I tried to pick questions that really revolved around the actual game and the gameplay. Because I did like some of these questions, but some of them, like the Caterpie evolves into a Butterfree, was just too simple, I felt. So we'll see. Hopefully my questions are...
You said too simple, but I got that one wrong, technically.
Technically the answer was wrong.
Alright. Otherwise, moving in, do you have any stories on the actual trainers before we get up to Blaine?
None other than the fact that there's some burglars there that look like they're trying to turn around their life, which I found pretty sweet.
There's a super nerd inside also that when you talk to before battling him, he says, I know why Blaine became a trainer. After you beat him, he does tell you that Blaine was lost in the mountains when a fiery bird Pokemon appeared. Its light enabled Blaine to find his way down. So that was pretty cool, alluding to the 3rd legendary Pokemon that we'll be seeing soon, hopefully.
Would have been nice if that 3rd Pokemon was nearby. Oh well, it's somewhere random.
One thing I did notice was a lot of the Pokemon did tend to use lots of Vulpix. And one of the trainers said that, like, us fire trainers like Ponyta and Ninetales, but he should have really added Vulpix too, because there were quite a few Vulpixes, at least in Pokemon Yellow that he knows.
The Pokemon are the same between Red, Blue, and Yellow, the trainers are. At least before the gym leader.
And this was also my first time getting a look at Rapidash's sprite, and I know Sean, like, hits out a lot of sprites for them looking pretty bad, but I felt like this was the first sprite that I saw that was really cool and really made me want to get a Rapidash. But my Ponyta was too low leveled, so I decided not to train it up.
That's funny that you said that, because in our generation, I really hate Rapidash's sprites.
Oh no.
Which, I'm looking now, in Pokemon Yellow, he looks really cool. So I see why you're saying that, but in Red and Blue, I don't know, does not do it for me.
His sprite was one of my favorites so far.
Yeah, the gym battle, well, I'll be honest, for me, it wasn't very eventful at all. I just I led with my Queenie, Nidoqueen, because I wanted to get her a level or a couple levels, see what XP I could get her. And I literally just used Earthquake and swept, like, the entire gym. He did get a couple hits on me with Rapidash and Arcanine, but it did, like, no damage to me, so It was I think I used Earthquake like 4 or 5 times, or 5 or 6 times. I think that was just to win. So
What were the Pokemon levels that Blaine had?
Oh, for us, so he led with a level 42 Growlithe, then he had a level 40 Ponyta, level 42 Rapidash, and then a level 47 Arcanine.
And for Pokemon Yellow, he only had 3 Pokemon, but he had a Ninetales at level 48, a Rapidash at level 50, and an Arcanine at level 54, so he did have some pretty beefy levels there.
How did your gym experience go?
I did have Cloyster with Surf, so I did just use Surf and basically swept the entire team, basically. He did use a Super Potion once, which was a little annoying because I couldn't be him in 3 moves, had to be 4 moves.
That's the thing that I find really disappointing with Blaine, is that he seems really cool, he has a cool gimmick, and his Pokemon generally are set up pretty well, but the problem is if they're all single fire types, if you have one water type Pokemon, then you're just going to sweep through it. And that's the same thing I did. I was training up Nessie, so this was a perfect opportunity for me to just keep using Surf and sweep through his team, which I did as well. But to comment on the team that Dustin had to face, I actually like the effort they put into it, because he has a level 48 Ninetales, which knows Confuse Ray, Quick Attack, and Flamethrower, so there's a little strategy into getting the Pokemon confused. He has level 50 Rapidash, which knows Fire Spin, which I thought is also really clever because Rapidash is fast. If you can get that Fire Spin out there and trap a Pokemon in that, use a couple takedowns or something, I think that's pretty good. And then the level 54 Arcanine looks actually pretty intimidating with Fire Blast, Flamethrower, Takedown, and Reflect. That's actually a really decent Pokemon if you're not prepared. But it sounds like, Dustin, you did pretty well.
Yeah, it was very easy for me with just using my Cloyster. And after you beat him, you do obtain the Volcano Badge, and you're given TM38 Fire Blast, which is a very good move.
Taught it to Char.
Moving into our section that we are now naming the Pokestats. Just to review how long it took me to complete the last episode, I finished at 33 hours and 23 minutes, and this episode I completed in 38 hours and 33 minutes. How about you guys?
So my total time after defeating Blaine was 25 hours and 6 minutes. I believe if my calculations are correct, that took me exactly 4 hours to get from Sabrina to Blaine. Didn't do that on purpose, but 4 hours.
That's close to mine with the 5 hours. Let's see how Sean did.
I completed it in 26 hours and 33 minutes.
So a little bit quicker too at 3 hours.
Sean is catching up to my total playtime, I see.
I'm like in the stratosphere right now. I have 10 more hours than both of you guys.
Well, once we get to the Pokemon capture, it'll show why.
Alright, Sean, let's hear your Pokemon total.
Oh god, well, so for this one, to remind everybody, last time I had 33 Pokemon, and I was very vocal about the Pokemon I caught this time, and so now I'm at 34 Pokemon. I only caught the Articuno and nothing else.
Well, thank you for being very thorough in all the Pokemon you caught this episode. I was at 63 caught Pokemon after Blaine.
Ooh, you're catching up, Chris. I like it. And for me, I was at 108 Pokemon. So we're getting close to the 150 mark. It's not possible, but I'll see how close I can get by the end of our series. And then we can move in to the Pokemon and the levels. So I know this episode we didn't really mention which Pokemon we were using during the entire episode, but I'll go ahead and start. I actually made no changes to the party, so it's just party levels that changed. So I had Hypno level 47, Victory Bell level 47, Machamp named Ricky by the other trainer level 48, Scyther level 49, Pikachu level 49, and my one Pokemon that came in clutch, Cloyster level 50.
Wow, very high leveled.
My weakest Pokemon and my newest was Nessie the Lapras at level 41, quickly growing. I still have Purdy the Persian at level 45, Char the Charizard at level 45. I have Sandy the Sandslash at level 46, Ave the Jolteon at level 45, and now the strongest member of my team and the newly evolved Greg, the Executor, at level 48. I gave it the Leaf Stone right at the end.
Finally, you evolved it.
It learned Sleep Powder, so I evolved it.
Everyone has some pretty high-level Pokemon. I guess now it's time for me to share my Pokemon, which are not as high-level, but they're kind of close to Chris's. But anyways, of course, I have my Shenron Dragonair, level 44. Queenie, the Nidoqueen, at level 45. Madame, the Kangaskhan, at level 44. Vulpix, the Flareon, at level 45. Blue, my Blastoise, at level 44. And then Lightyear, the Electabuzz, again at level 44.
This time again, Sean has the lowest level Pokemon. We'll have to see how it goes. See if there's a chance that me and Chris can just brute force this with higher level Pokemon.
Dustin, quick question. Are you grinding at all, or are the Pokemon that much stronger in Pokemon Yellow?
I think I did grind a little bit in the previous episode. That was another reason why I had like 8 hours played, was because not only was I capturing Pokemon, I had to every Pokemon I saw, I was just battling them while I was trying to capture the specific ones I wanted. And then also I want to beat Sean.
We'll see if it helps.
Yeah, in Pokemon Red and Blue, I feel like even if you fight every single trainer, it's hard to get higher than the 45s. It just starts slowing down a bunch.
I mean, I always thought that Dragonair, I don't know why, but I thought it evolved at level 42. So I was very excited to get it at that level. And then it didn't evolve. And it still hasn't evolved at level 44. And I frankly forgot what level it does evolve. I'm hoping it's not at a super high level, because it makes it very not useful until it finally does get to that final evolution.
I'm going to guess you don't want me to spoil that for you?
Nah, don't spoil it. I want to figure out through trial and error.
All right.
One last minute thing that I forgot to mention during my time going through the Pokemansion and the gym, we did get a lot of money. And so I did finally have enough money to go back to the game corner and buy the TM for Hyper Beam. And I won't spoil to you guys which Pokemon I gave Hyper Beam, but I'm sure you could probably figure it out. It's a very strong Pokemon with a very strong move now.
Ever since Chris has been using that Hyper Beam with Purdy, the Persian, has been making me quite jealous too, but we'll have to see if I can get Hyper Beam at some point.
Very expensive.
Moving to the close of this episode, thank you everyone for listening to this episode. Be on the lookout for our next episode, as when that one releases in the next 2 weeks, we will be battling each other in a round-robin format that we are now calling the Kanto Battles. If you would like to see our statistics so far, you can always follow us on Twitter at The Trainer Trio. You can also email us at The Trainer Trio Podcast if you have any questions or would like to just talk to us. In our next episode, we will be talking about our experiences leading up to and battling the final gym leader, a mysterious figure who apparently no one knows his name. So until next time, we are the Trainer Trio signing off. Catch you in Vermillion City, trainers.